Welcome back to Summer Camp 2024 with No Revisions, a podcast where we talk about our service providers and their respective crafts and trends in their industries. Today we have Crystal Ivy, who's the founder of Crystal Ivy, who is a marketing specialist and does supportive design. Crystal, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, I was so happy to meet you. We recently wrapped up a project and actually starting a whole new project together where
Yeah.
you're doing all of the email marketing for us at No Revisions and some really cool projects that we have going on. So, really excited to talk to you about email marketing today.
Yeah.
So, my first question for you is can you kind of explain why email marketing is still relevant in today's landscape? Especially within the consumer brand space, that is a lot of the types of brands that we work with. But I think email's been around for a while, and from what I see, tends to be one of the highest converting types of marketing that you can do. So I'd love for you to just kind of talk a little bit more about that.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, we're kind of in the era of social media and having sometimes some really uncertain futures for certain platforms. TikTok, we're looking at you. But the great thing about email marketing is you have ownership of the following and the community that you are working to build. On Instagram, on TikTok, anywhere else, it's not your information that you have worked so hard for. It's on a platform that can disappear in a day. Your profile could go away. Email is a great way to be able to actually nurture a community that is yours. Like you said, it's also it's got one of the highest ROI compared to other marketing channels. And it also enables us to be really specific with how we target people, how we segment and nurture those relationships based on their interests. I mean, there's just so many ways that you can leverage email marketing. And if it's the only marketing channel you're using, great. You can still have results from that, which isn't always the case in other avenues. But it also only grows when you've got these other factors in play, like paid traffic, like organic. There's just so much opportunity there, and it's oftentimes like you're not at the you're not subjected to an algorithm to decide whether or not it gets served to other people. If you are putting out good content and doing things in a way that is strategic and engaging, people will see your content. And yeah, it's a really important piece of the whole marketing approach.
I think you made so many good points there. I guess this happened when the iOS 14 update happened and everybody was only targeting people on Facebook ads, and then their businesses kind of shut down because they didn't have anywhere else to push out things to people.
Exactly.
And the whole thing with TikTok right now, like people could lose that. And we lost Vine years ago. Like definitely, when I work with people on social media marketing, sometimes we're like, okay, let's work on 2 social media channels. We don't like to get started and maybe expand
Mhm.
into more, but like you can't put all your eggs in one basket, and we don't own any of that. So you can lose 100,000 followers in
Yeah.
a day if you haven't done anything else with that information. So I think, yeah, that's a really good point to make. And I think like you kind of talked about this with conversions, but what are other things that you're tracking for email that like brands can kind of have as a goal? Is it like brand awareness, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so many things. Brand awareness, really the engagement of the audience, and making sure this can happen in a bunch of different ways, but with email specifically, you have a great ability to better understand the target audience. A lot of times clients will come and they have this idea of who their brand is, of who their target avatar is, and it's not actually the people they're serving or the people that are in their community. So email's a great way because or is a great thing because you can send an email based on a lot of different factors and better understand who is this person that is looking to have my service done for them or wants to buy my product or whatever the case may be. Email's a great opportunity to better enable customization on a lot of different levels. Yeah, hopefully did that answer your question?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So let's say that a brand is either just launching or they just want to get started or do things the right way on email, because I know
Mhm.
that's kind of why I came to you and worked with you was, hey, I've been doing email. I have like one automated email that goes out, then I send a newsletter every week, but kind of walk me through like what that process looks like for a new brand or somebody that wants to get into this. Like, is there a certain amount of emails that should be in a sequence before they get newsletters, or do you even suggest doing newsletters?
Always, newsletters are great. They're a really easy entry point. A welcome series is going to be usually my first recommendation. A welcome series or a newsletter. It really depends on your bandwidth, your industry. There's no perfect number of emails really for most things, outside of maybe like transactional emails. That's a whole other story. But when you're first starting your email marketing journey, a welcome series is a really easy way to build this environmental approach. So really making sure you can set up a workflow and have one single email. A welcome series enables people to either land on your website or get into your world in some way and start to learn and start to be nurtured, whether you're online or off. A newsletter is great because it's a little bit more timely. It's something that people can have a lot of personality injected into in their campaigns, but it positions you to have to be responsible for something. It's something that's not automated. It's something that has to have content for, whether it's a weekly blast, a monthly, interaction, something like that. Whereas when you start with a welcome series, sometimes if you're doing it by yourself, I'll recommend just start with one email. If you're a solopreneur and that is something that is like, you need, but you don't necessarily have the ability to grow this giant strategy for, start with one email. And then when you have the time and bandwidth, build a second one. Um, Beyond that though, like if you're really trying to better enhance the campaigns you already have, I would say for a welcome series, 3 to 5 emails in that workflow is going to be kind of the sweet spot, but it depends. Like maybe there's a longer timeline that your clients take to convert or to move into a different part of the sales funnel. So my answer, and I'm probably going to say this a lot this episode, is testing and learning. Welcome series is a great point to entry in email marketing, as well as some of those like other factors. If you have past clients, past customers, send out a newsletter tailored specifically to them, or a re-engagement campaign specifically for them. Hey, you purchased X, Y, and Z from us last month, and you're probably out by now. We want to make sure you have what you need. So here's a quick link to either buy the same thing or something similar. And really, like, the methodology I have with email is the best point to start is yesterday. So any sort of effort that you've got that you can channel into something productive or something, even if it's just a singular email, do it. Just commit to it and build it out.
That's a really good point. And I think this is something I struggled with well, not struggled with, but working with y'all, you helped me figure it out of like, how do you figure out what information should go into a welcome series? And one note I want to make about that, and I'm assuming you agree with, is like, we have to remember there's only a certain percentage of people that open these emails, and then they probably don't read everything. So I think it's okay to repeat some information. But yeah, can you kind of talk about like how you go about determining what should go into the welcome series for a client?
Yeah. Yeah, you're so right. I mean, I think I have this conversation all the time, is whatever you're doing in your marketing efforts and your conversations with people, you're probably not talking about your offer enough. And if you feel annoying, you've probably only started to talk about it enough, and you should keep going. And so with email, yeah, with a welcome series specifically, the first one I always try and make all about who you are. We're not really pushing a ton of sales or have this urgent messaging approach in the first email, because people are still trying to figure out what is this thing, what is this environment, this world that I've just dipped my toes into. Um, the second and third email is about where you'll start positioning what makes you different and really outlining what you have to offer from e-commerce perspective. This might look like, in our first email we talked about the products that we have available, but the great thing about our products is they pair really well together. This goes with this. We've got a bundle available here. So that's something. Sorry, there's a truck going by. That's something that's really important to keep in mind, is the second email is also not really something that you have to push a sale on, but really just growing that awareness. 3, 4, 5, that's where we're going to start positioning the call to action more from a sales perspective. Hey, here's where you can go to look at, the shop all page, whatever the page you're pushing them towards is. But making sure that, the first touch point isn't, hey, you need to buy from us right now, because no one likes that. We get that, in a lot of different areas of the consumer market all the time. And so a really personalized approach is so important, and making sure that when you're in someone's inbox, it's not the it doesn't have to be jump down their throat. In fact, it often that doesn't even work in any sort of approach. So yeah, that's usually the strategy for the framework of a welcome series.
That's awesome. So one thing you mentioned earlier was about like testing and learning.
Hmm.
Let's say we got this welcome series together and it's been sent out enough times to where like you feel like there's enough data to learn from. Like, what are you kind of looking at? Is it where and what people are clicking? Is it open rates? Like, where should people go to kind of figure out, okay, I should potentially change this?
Yeah. Open rate, click through rate, conversion rate. Those are going to be your North Stars. Open rate is a little bit of a vanity metric because just because someone opened your email doesn't necessarily mean they read it, like you said. And also, just because they skimmed your email doesn't mean they understood it. So, open rate's helpful for context, I would say, and better understanding the other factors, click through rate and conversion rate. There's a million different ways to A B test. Platforms like Klaviyo, I'm a Klaviyo partner, so I'm a little biased, but there's other platforms that can do this as well. But measuring success of a campaign based on where they clicked, how they clicked, not how they clicked, where they clicked, and how long they spent on the page after they clicked. It's almost like this, you have to have a data sharing approach when understanding how an email campaign did. So, say we have an email campaign that goes out about a new product launch, and all the buttons link to the new launch, the new launch product. When we're understanding how an email campaign did, we're going to measure how often did they click that, where did they click? Did they click at the top of the email, the middle, or the bottom? And also, when they landed on that page, were they actually like interested in purchasing or interested in spending time learning more about the product? So having that information to be able to share informs not only how well the landing page is converting, but also how the email campaign is pushing leads that want to buy. The conversion rate from an e-commerce perspective is really straightforward. If you're a service-based industry, that isn't always so straightforward, but it is still possible. No Revisions is a great example of how to kind of better measure that, because you guys have this productized service layout. And that can be an easy way if someone feels like, I don't actually know like how well my emails convert because they're on my email list, they're engaging, but like, it's X amount of months before they actually become a client, if ever at all. So that's something to take into consideration too. And this approach goes throughout A/B testing in general. You have to really analyze what you're testing in the first place and how you want to interpret that data at the other side once you have the information available.
Yeah, and so you just mentioned Klaviyo, and that was going to be a question of like, is there a platform that you recommend for everyone? Because I know like Klaviyo and Shopify are seem to be best friends.
Yeah.
But do you kind of mention like I guess suggest Klaviyo for all types of businesses?
Um, Not everybody. I use it myself, and so I will still recommend it to service-based industries. It was built for product e-commerce brands, of course, so that is always going to be my recommendation for a product, a product-based business. Um, for for service providers, sometimes Flowdesk is my go-to because they're going to be DIYing most of it. And if they want an entry point that makes sense, that they can build beautiful emails with, Flowdesk is a great opportunity for that. I think more often than not, the actual email campaign builders are going to be fairly similar. Some are more robust, some are more straightforward, but you have to be able to figure out what are you willing to learn or what do you not want to learn and just want to have, kind of drag and drop, plug and play. Um, The other piece to consider is pricing. So they all have very different prices based on your list size, um, how many emails you're sending, and then Flowdesk is like more of a flat rate. So price point is important too, but the other side of it is analytics, and those those are wildly different based on platform to platform. Klaviyo is the leader in terms of informed analytics, really granular information, and that you can use to tailor your strategies, and that can inform other parts of your marketing. Um, Flowdesk has, like I said, a more entry level data presentation layout. So you're not going to be able to do as much with it, but you don't always need to have these like crazy robust information dashboards, especially if you're DIYing things, as a lot of people are with email. So yeah, it is really case by case, but more often than not, I'm recommending Klaviyo and Flowdesk.
Awesome. And one thing you mentioned with pricing was like list size.
Mm-hmm.
I think something with email marketing is like, well, you have to have people to send these emails to. Do you have any tips or like suggestions on how people can go about like securing people on their email list?
Yeah, growth strategies is something that I talk with clients a lot about because and I have to wonder if some of this comes from being in the era of digital products, like that market is just so broad that when we look at kind of the freebie or the list lead magnets, people are like have a really narrow concept of what that can be. You can grow your email list in more ways than anyone could ever list out for you, whether that's a PDF, a private podcast, anything like that. If you're putting a sign up form in front of whatever the thing is, and you have the option for someone to plug in their email in order to access that, then that is a way to grow your email list. I always recommend to do a competitor or peer analysis. Find gaps in your industry where maybe someone has paid services or paid products or something along the lines that people can leverage in order to solve a problem or get value out of. But is there a free version with your expertise available? If not, that's a great opportunity in order to leverage to make as a list lead magnet. So yeah, I mean, I think in terms of growing your list, there's the lead magnet side of things that's really important. It's a little bit more time intensive because you have to develop that product and do the research. The other side of that, though, are some of these more day to day actions. So going on your stories and putting a question box. Hey, drop your email. We're sending out a newsletter at the end of the week. We want to make sure you get access to it. Something like that is a really easy way to get people engaged, and to know that you have reoccurring email campaigns happening, because people want to read your emails. If they're engaging with you on other areas, they want more content from you, but they might not know that that's available unless you're reminding them. Same thing for your offer, right? We have to tell people all the time, this is available. I have this for you. Come and get it. Um, we're busy, so it's helpful to be reminded about things. And yeah, just talking about it, like, you can sign up for a discount. Discounts are great. I think sometimes people overthink the discounts in order to grow their list. It doesn't need to be anything crazy. You can have a small percentage off or a free gift, anything like that that makes sense with your margins. You can position it as a thing to grow your list with.
Yeah. So something you mentioned earlier was like looking at competitors. Do you suggest people sign up for their competitor emails, or is there anywhere to go to find like email inspo without having to get everybody's email to your inbox?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I actually really love seeing competitor emails. Not even because I think it also allows you to create something different, and it's cool to see like what is everybody doing. So that is an option. I mean, you got to do it with respect and not in an approach that's kind of like weird. But Milled.com, Milled, is a great resource. Another one is really good emails.com. They're very similar. You can kind of build collections of emails from these major brands, mostly e-commerce brands. Really good emails is great because, which maybe Milled has this. I typically lean more towards really good emails. But what they do is they have email campaigns categorized by intent. So is it a newsletter? Is it transactional? Is it re-engagement? I mean, they've just got so many opportunities there. Another thing that I've started doing is I will go to Pinterest and look at web designs, and I will try and find small components, maybe they're canvases or pieces of websites that make sense and could be transferable into an email. That's just something that I feel like there's a lot of overlap between web design and email design in terms of what works. So a lot of times you can find inspiration from other areas. It's just a matter of making it your own and yeah, making it something custom.
So talking about like I guess competitors and what the whole project we just worked on was with white papers and then setting up
Hmm.
welcome flow and everything. But something I'm always curious about is like personalization because I feel like
Hmm.
on our website I typically am just like what's your name and what's your email? Like
Yeah.
I don't want to make this overcomplicated, but when I download white papers a lot it's like what is your company name? What is your name? What is your email? What is your job role? Like what is your seniority? All these things.
Hmm.
I guess question is twofold, but like how much do you think is too much to ask that
Hmm.
could deter people from giving you that information? And how do you feel about personalization? Do you feel like just having their name and being able to plug that into the front of the email helps with conversions or anything
Hmm.
like that?
Yeah, so this is a really good question. The first portion is in terms of an entry point, like how much information are you asking people to share with you? I would say you're going to get more people to sign up if you make it super simple. There's a kind of this new, it's not necessarily new, but more people I'm seeing are just having a space for the email address. They're not even asking for the first name. Um, that I don't typically lean into as much. I would say there's opportunity based on how well you know your audience. If you know, especially if you're doing this from a paid traffic perspective and you don't really like you only know kind of the interest group that they fall within, um, I would ask less, just as an effort to get people that kind of have this already intent in mind. If it's your sign up form on your website, I would say first name, email address, and then making a phone number optional. That is kind of my go to because a lot of times people don't want to share their phone number with you, but you will be shocked. You will be so shocked if you put that as an optional field by how many phone numbers you will collect and eventually be able to leverage that for SMS marketing. I mean, I see this all the time. The it's a missed opportunity for future marketing efforts. I think oftentimes I'm seeing these like really long, intensive fields. Like field lists on sign up forms for higher priced products where you kind of have to um, navigate like is this someone who's going to be more inclined to purchase this higher ticket item or are they going to not necessarily be a decision maker in their agency or their organization, and so some of that comes down to use your best judgment based on what you know. The other portion of your question as far as personalization as a whole, I am of the mindset that a putting the like first name tag um, in an email is fine. We know that based on plenty of studies, the personalization of an email does tend to lend itself to higher conversion rates. It also lends itself to errors, and if someone puts some weird text or something and they didn't even see themselves type something wrong in the initial sign up form, then you're sending an email out and they're like they don't even know how to spell my name. um, it leaves a lot of room for error. The personalization, like true personalization, comes from segmentation and having a better understanding than just someone's first name. So where did they sign up for, where did they sign up and what did they sign up for, as well as making sure based on what they've purchased in the past or some of the pages they visited on your website. Like those factors are really going to allow you to have a better approach to personalization than just sticking, hey, so and so, great to see you. Here's kind of our new launch. Um, that is where you're going to see better conversions, because instead of feeling, I equate it to kind of like when you get a cold DM from someone and it just says, hey, so and so, and it's the same message, they sent to like 30 other people. It doesn't really feel that great. Whereas when I get an email from someone who has been, who has monitored what I've looked at on their site, or who has, made great suggestions based on what I've purchased in the past, I'm like, actually, yeah, they're right. I probably do need the eyeshadow, or I am interested in that skincare product because I bought the sunscreen last week and I need the other thing. Um, so that's kind of where I lean more on the personalization side. But again, it all comes back to testing, and like maybe your audience really does like a more straightforward approach. More often than not, it's going to be that deep understanding that's going to convert better.
That's awesome. And so a lot of this we've been talking about is just getting email set up and welcome flows.
Hmm.
But once that's done, like, and I know I'm sure it's a case by case basis, but like, how often should we be sending emails? And I think I want to just push aside like abandoned car and anything post purchase, but like,
Mhm.
if we're talking about newsletters or things like that, like, how often or what is too much? Like, what are those numbers looking like?
Yeah, I mean, what is too much will be reflected in your open rate, your click through rate, your unsubscribes. When you have an uptick, when you are like, let's try a weekly newsletter. We've never done it before, but you've kind of warmed up your list. People can expect an email from you every couple of weeks, and you want to try a week by week cadence. I would monitor the unsubscribe. You're going to see that uptick. That could look like anything based on the size of your list. But yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to make sure that you're monitoring those factors. From a newsletter perspective, I would say starting month to month is like a once a month newsletter is great. A bi weekly newsletter can be really helpful, but ultimately, from a content perspective, you're going to want that to be shorter. I would say the more frequent the emails, the shorter they're going to be. And I don't think there's anything wrong with a weekly newsletter. Oftentimes, that does wonders for nurturing someone's experience with you as a brand. But you can't jump from once every couple of months to once a week. That doesn't work. You're gonna have terrible ratings. You're also gonna hurt your sender reputation. There's a lot of factors there. So I agree. There it is a case by case basis. I would say to make sure people just on like a email hygiene perspective, once a month newsletter is a really easy way to do that. Once you've done that, if you are getting great results and you're like, I think people might want more from us, try it with a really engaged segment first. Don't just blast your whole list. Oh my gosh, if I could say this a million times. Have an engaged segment that you can test with, that are interested in purchasing, that really like you, are loyal, and test a bi-weekly and then test a weekly. The great thing about segmentation is you learn a lot without having to infiltrate a million different inboxes and risk tanking your numbers. So that's something that I would say would be really helpful when you're figuring out what the right cadence is for you. But yeah, a monthly newsletter is a great way to do that. And also, just like from a sales perspective, like a promotional campaign, I really wouldn't be sending those out. I wouldn't send them out. This goes to the root of like having a sale every month and like having discounts all the time. But I wouldn't send those out too frequently, and that's going to look different for everybody. But when you do, you can send out more because people need to hear about it more. Maybe it's, every 24 hours for 4 days, or if it's a lightning sale, making sure they get an email the night before, the morning of, and the evening, depending on the segment. So, yeah, hopefully that's not too much of a canned answer, but it is a lot of testing and making sure you're not annoying the crap out of people.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I guess going into testing and segmentation and how you can make optimizations, like, is
Mhm.
there a minimum amount of people that need to get an email before you're like, hey, like, this is a good sample size to consider?
Mhm.
Like, is it 100 people? Is it 1,000? Is it 10,000?
Well, I would say there's not a minimum. I would say there's a minimum level of like trust you should have. So like if you're testing something, because a lot of people, most people do not have, like, smaller companies are not going to have 100,000, 150,000 people on their subscribers list. So they're working with smaller testing groups. So I would say it it matters less on the number of people. It matters more how well you know them and how they will kind of like bounce back if something is a total flop. Because sometimes you'll have that. You're going to have emails that are just terrible. Just like, you're going to have social content that doesn't do well at all. Um, and so I would say, when you're looking at who to kind of test email campaigns with, position it more as, okay, I know that these people have repeat purchased about 3 times in the last year. They open our emails, they click every couple of times, and we understand that they're engaged. They care about what we have to say. So let's try with them and see what that information yields. The great part about that also is, if you're just testing to a random segment or to your broad list, a lot of times people are just not going to click, not because they're not interested, but because they've got other emails they're navigating through. So it's not the best place to be testing, because you don't have the baseline of engaged people in the first place.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So kind of looking ahead and talking about like email marketing and what people should be doing, are there trends or things that we should start preparing for? Like I know in social media we're talking about algorithm changes all the time and like trending things we should approach in our content this week. Like does that exist in email?
Definitely. I mean, and in the same way with content, like trend forecasting, like integrating that, I think is going to be more prevalent than ever. From a just a, I guess maybe this is more of a personal take I have, but we're seeing AI already integrated in email in a lot of different ways. That is only going to skyrocket. And so with that kind of comes the ability um, to better understand your audience, make more engaging content. We'll have a lot more capabilities in terms of how you can interact with an email. So as of right now, you can add things to cart. You can have kind of this like hover effect in emails. I see that only being more engaging, almost like eventually it's going to turn into kind of sending someone a mini landing page in their inbox. So that's something that, we're already kind of seeing the groundwork being laid for. And privacy, like being able to, people really value their privacy, right, as they should. And with that comes having to better nurture, and better inform and be able to gain the trust of people who are allowing you to take up space in their inbox. We're coming off of the back of Apple's WWDC event, which I'm not sure if you saw that yesterday, but
I started watching clips today. Yeah.
so their email updates, one of which is being able to open an email, click on a brand who sent this email to you, and seeing a summary of every email they've ever sent to you. So people are going to be able to evaluate you on a full timeline perspective, rather than just being subjected to an email every twice a month or something, and not necessarily engaging, but not necessarily unsubscribing. So I think the future of that is really being able to kind of build a better, stronger community, because otherwise you're not going to get sales from them in the first place. You're not going to have that trust built. They're not going to be able to, I was going to say, make excuses for you to stay in their inbox, but I mean, really, they're not going to want you in their space if they don't know you have value and that they understand the value in the first place.
Yeah, that update sounds crazy. I'm gonna have to go watch everything about that.
You should.
There's
We
some
we
really
were
cool updates
geeking
from
out about
Apple
it
this time.
yesterday.
Yeah. Well, my last question is like for people working on their email themselves, is there any best practices or tips that you kind of have of just like easy things that they can do or kind of check off when they're working on these email campaigns?
Definitely. Above the fold, so like the first, when you open an email, the first section, that needs to have a call to action, an actionable thing that people can click on and go to the next step in the funnel with, whether that's a banner, whether that's a button. It can't just be an image with a link. Tell them what to do and where they're going. Be really clear. Skip the clever wording, like make it very apparent where they're going. Optimize your emails for mobile. People are more often than not reading their emails on their phone. And if you have optimized an email for desktop and not even looked or evaluated how it appears on mobile, I guarantee you it's going to look very different. And more often than not, it looks like garbage. And you want people to be able to read it, right? Like that's the very basis of an email is people need to be able to see what information is contained there. Um, yeah, calls to action, making sure that, if an email has an intent to someone else or lead someone somewhere else, have multiple points. Each time they scroll, they should be presented with the opportunity to take that step. Um, this can look like a hyperlink, a button, anything, whatever it means to take that next step. Give them the opportunity to do so. Allow them to have other links at the very bottom, making sure your social links are available, making sure that if they want to just browse on the website, they don't have to go straight to a collections page. At the bottom, there should be some space for you to just visit the website on the homepage. And yeah, just test. Don't be afraid to have something flop. Don't be afraid to do something wrong or send a typo or something like that. Some of the best emails that have in my whole career that have outnumbered these really intensive strategic emails are ones with subject lines of like test or something that the clients, they just wanted to send themselves a test and they ended up accidentally sending it to their entire list. It happens. And a lot of times people open that and click like crazy. So, it's yes, you can't send an email and then take it back. But what's great is audiences are more forgiving than we give them credit for. They're smarter than we give them credit for. And if you're testing and learning, you're going to find a way to navigate what works and to use more of that, and allow it to inform your other marketing decisions too. If content does great on social, try it in email and vice versa. Yeah, just keep testing, keep trying.
That's awesome. Well, all these tips and all the information you shared today was amazing. If you want to work with Crystal, I will link her website and her email in the show notes. But thanks again.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.